I think that the trap when you become famous for whatever it is that the grass is always going to be greener. There's always going to be those things that you don't have because nobody has everything except Lin-Manuel Miranda. He has absolutely everything, and he's a genius.
It's How to Be Amazing. I'm Michael Ian Black. Here is something that I did not know about myself. I honestly did not know about this about myself. And in fact, when I was doing the television show, Michael and Michael Have Issues, I did a joke. We had a sketch about a high school kid who was obsessed with my guest today, Josh Groban. And I did not know anything about Josh Groban other than he was just this kind of pop star who had this gorgeous voice and he did these classy songs and all the rest. And it seemed funny to me that this high school kid would love Josh Groban so much. But here's what I didn't know until I started doing research for this interview. I love Josh Groban. Me, 45-year-old Michael Ian Black, found myself incredibly moved listening to Josh Groban. And now it's very embarrassing to say that to Josh Groban, who is sitting across from me.
I promised myself I wouldn't cry. He got me 48 seconds in, Michael. 48 seconds in, goddamn you. Thank you.
You all know Josh Groban. He has sold literally millions of albums.
With an M.
Yes, with an M. No, look, I'm not going to exaggerate. It's not trillions. It's not gajillions.
Not yet.
It's a humble millions of albums. And he's played sold-out concerts all over the world. Now he stars in Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812 on Broadway, affectionately referred to as The Great Comet. And I'm thrilled to welcome him to How to Be Amazing. Hello.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you for that stunning revelation.
It's true.
Very honored.
I mean, I've heard you before, but I'd never really sat down and listened with
Headphones.
any real attention to Josh Groban,
well,
the singer. And you're amazing.
Thank you so much. And I loved that joke, by the way, on Michael and Michael.
Oh, you saw it?
Oh, of course I did. I had 100 friends sent that to me.
I'm just a normal dude. I like to do normal dude stuff, you know. This is my bedroom. As you can see, I'm just a little bit into Josh Groban. I wouldn't say I'm a Joshaholic, but I wouldn't say I'm not.
I love that. I think in England they call that taking the piss. And
Well, that was going to be one of my questions for you, because you have such you're kind of known for this self-deprecating sense of humor. And is it strategic in a way to take the piss out of critics? I think it's honest to it. It's clearly honest.
I think there's a couple of things that play with that kind of thing. I think that, when you're in junior high school and you're a little bit different and you're kind of shy, and I think when you're bullied in junior high and high school, then you have to develop a little bit of a shield. And that's, I think, for a lot of people that use comedy as a deflector, that can sometimes be one of the first muscle builders of that, is that I was picked on in school.
Why?
And so, I don't know. I was not great at sports. I was interested in singing in like jazz chorus. I had a big vibrato, which, especially when your voice doesn't change until you're like 14 and a half years old. Like I just was different. When I look back at it, I was trying to think of like all the reasons why maybe the kids that were like the cool kids gave me a hard time. But really it just came down to that I just wasn't like everybody else. You realize that that's a great thing when you're older. You can pave your own path, but in high school, it's it's prison rules. It's you gotta find a clique, and I had a hard time doing that. So I would tell jokes. I would like tell the joke about me before the quarterback could tell the joke, and it would make him laugh, and he'd be like,
You're all right, Groban.
You're still an asshole. But keep being you, man. Keep being you. Whatever.
I was very surprised when you walked in here that you are drinking what appears to be a soda pop.
It's an iced tea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that explains a lot. Because it seems to me that a vocalist cannot drink soda pop, particularly when he has a show this evening.
Right.
Is that correct?
Well, the interesting thing about doing Broadway and 8 shows a week is that you become just a little bit less precious about your instrument. When I'm on a concert tour, and I know I've got 17, 18 songs to do in a night, you're treating your voice like a fine vase, you just on a shelf, and you can't do anything that would crack it.
Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk
when you're doing 8 shows a week, you just become so into the routine of it that you start losing your mind a little bit, and you start realizing that if you don't incorporate some things that you like into your life, you are going to start really resenting your job. And so, yes, some soda pop every now and then, maybe a little cheese on my sandwich if I'm nasty. And you go out every now and then. You have a drink every other few nights, and you've got to balance between total monk mode and real life, because otherwise, 8 shows a week will just make you crazy.
If you're doing a concert, you're doing 17 or 18 songs a night. But the Great Comet it's like 2.5 hours, isn't it?
It is.
So you're doing probably close to that.
Well, no, I mean the thing is that it's more shows for me than a concert tour. And on a concert tour, I'll do probably 5 concerts in a week. I'll do 2 on and 1 off. Night. And then, but Broadway is 8 shows, but it's such an ensemble piece. You're a cog in a really awesome wheel. And so I have big numbers where I pop out of my den where Pierre, my character, sits, and I do these big, very vocally heavy scenes.
Is this how I die? Was there ever any other way my life could be? Is this how I die? Such a storm of feelings inside of me. But then why am I screaming? Why am I shaking? Oh God, was there something that I missed?
And then I sit down, and other people take over, and they do their scenes, and they do their big songs, and I observe, or play accordion, or play piano, and that gives me a chance to recharge vocally. So I actually love sharing that responsibility. The thing about Broadway that I've loved, the thing about theater that I've loved ever since I was an arts student, is sharing that teamwork, having each other's back. You can feel if somebody's having a tired night or whatever, and you're sending that energy to each other. And that's much more comforting sometimes than when they say, okay, well, it's time, and you walk out and it's just you and a microphone, and it's your job to fill 2 hours. That's a little bit less scary.
But if I die here tonight, I die in my sleep.
Were you always confident in your voice? Did you always know you had a voice?
No, I think sometimes if something is your clearest path, you actually shy away from it even more. I don't know if acting and comedy was that way for you when you were younger, but for me, like knowing I had this thing in me was something I was actually very nervous about and very shy about. And it took some really awesome teachers to eventually kind of pull me out from the back of said jazz choir and say, hey, I've noticed you've got this voice. I'm going to force you into a solo, and you're going to do it next week. I would not have given myself that chance to do that. And that's why our teachers and our arts teachers are such heroes, is you give the opportunities to develop that confidence in yourself. And that's kind of how I started to realize that this was something I could maybe do. And I was a student when I got signed to my record label. I talk about being bullied at 13, 14. I was signed when I was 17. So the path from being nervous and insecure and not knowing if this was really something I should do, or if I would get beat up for doing it, right into here's this enormous 7-album deal. I was still that nervous, insecure student when I was being put on TV for the first time and having to be like the new guy.
Will you be there for me? Every time I go away, will you be there for me? Thinking of me every day, are you my destiny? Words I never dared to say, will you be there for me?
I always knew that the music was a language that was my favorite language to speak. I knew that I could play by ear. I would go home every night after school, and I would sit down at the piano, and I would play songs that I heard on the radio that day, or I would write, or I would just improvise. I begged for a drum set 7 Christmases in a row, and I eventually got one, and I would just beat the crap out of that thing every single night. Music was so cathartic to me. So I knew that, especially in a volatile environment like junior high, I knew that a music class of some sort would be something I would really, really enjoy. I was drawn to it, but I also wanted to be part of it and be a little bit anonymous in it too.
I've only spoken to one other operatic tenor. on this show,
Oh.
and it sounded the way he described it when he opened his voice vocally, like it was obvious to everybody that he had this.
Who was it, by the way?
His name's Carl Tanner. Do you
Okay.
know him?
I know the name. Yeah.
If you haven't listened to the episode, he's a former bounty hunter who turned operatic tenor.
As one does.
As one does.
Yeah, sure.
And he had this voice, so he would just open his mouth, and that voice would fall out.
Yeah.
Was that similar for you? That it just had this unusual vocal quality?
I had an unusual and good vocal quality. I was not singing out. I was singing very quietly. I was singing
Purposely?
Purposely.
Right.
Because it was scary. It was a scary thing because my mind, my body, like every other bit of me was really kind of meek at that point. And I knew I had this instrument, but I didn't know that it was okay or allowed to, sing, let it flow out like that. So I would do these concerts, I would do these solos, and I would just sing kind of quietly. I would just kind of croon softly. And eventually I had voice teachers that said to me, you've got this beautiful light bulb. You're not cranking up the wattage. You need to let it go. And so I would learn about breath support and technique and things like that. And it wasn't until I got my first lead roles in musicals in high school that I was forced, because of the material, to sing out. And it was really the material that gave me the permission to do that. If I didn't sing the way that the piece was written, then I would fail out there. And so I wound up just, I was Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof in senior year. So you can't sing softly when you do Tevye. You have to be the big patriarch,
You got to really
milkman.
deedle-diddle-dum.
You got to deedle-dum with all your might, or you're going to flounder out there. So Tevye brought it out of me. And so that was kind of when I realized, like, whoa, this is kind of bigger than I've been doing.
And
it works.
Was that scary for you to let it go?
It was actually the amazing discovery was that it was the happiest I had ever been in my life. That was the moment when I felt like my truest form of communication was actually resonating with people. When you let that side of yourself out, and then you get something like the validation of applause, or people saying great job afterwards, or whatever it is, people stopping you in the hallways, you just think to yourself,
Hey Groban, I saw your Tevye
hey,
last
man.
night.
Yeah, hey bro.
Very, very insightful.
Got the voice of an angel, man. So yeah, no, even Troy liked it. Yeah.
How does one get a 7-album record deal at 17? I mean, how does that even
You
happen?
have to have a champion who believes in you.
I don't have that.
I'm quite sure you do, Michael, and I'm sure
I'm still waiting on my 7-album deal.
Listen, you're going to get a Grammy before I do. Mark my words. It's always the person, not the company, in any facet of this business or any other business. David Foster was somebody who believed in my voice, and everybody thought he was crazy.
For listeners who don't know, can you describe David Foster and his work?
Sure. And so my discovering of David Foster was that he called a voice teacher that I was working with in Los Angeles, said, hey, I need somebody to sing at an event. David is the MC for a million charities, always. He's always lending his time to raise money for anything. And he sits at the piano and he gathers talent and he puts on these amazing evenings. And I was lucky enough to be one of the, I sent in a tape. He said, hey, this kid is good. I'd like him to sing a song from Phantom of the Opera. And I needed to be introduced to him this was before Wikipedia and all that stuff. I went to his house to rehearse and I saw all the platinum records on the wall. And I went, oh my God, he produced all those Celine records. He produced all those Whitney Houston records. He produced Chicago. So I started to realize, oh my God, like I've just been basically discovered by this guy who is one of the great legends of the industry. And we sang I sang for him for a bunch of stuff. And I thought it was just a great learning experience. I thought it would be fun. It wasn't until about a year later that he started having me sing for people that were actually record label people, backyards of parties that weren't necessarily charities, just parties for the CEO of Warner Records or what have you. So he was the one who kind of said, look, this isn't NSYNC. This isn't, music at that time was we had Andrea Bocelli, we had Sarah Brightman, we had the three tenors, but they were kind of the exception, not the rule, as far as what the music business was hiring at that point. So to say, hey, I've got this 17-year-old kid, he's got this big voice, what do you think? the natural inclination is, well, can we get it on the radio? No. Can we get it on MTV? No. What do you want to do with it? David, if you want to have this as a pet project and hopefully you'll break even, go for it. David can do whatever he wants. So that was David. He said, let's hit the studio. He plucked me out of freshman year of college, and he said, we can get you a deal. It'll probably be a little off the shelf, but let's do this. And my parents, to their credit, had the foresight and the wherewithal to say, yes, this is a departure momentarily perhaps from school, but this is a masterclass that you will perhaps not ever get ever again in your life. And this is an opportunity that we think you should try out, because in the arts, sometimes the doors open in very, very different ways for different people. So I will forever be thankful to my folks for letting that process happen. And then ultimately the fact that David was the only guy, basically, who thought we should make a record together. There were no other labels that were knocking. It was an odd pick.
Was there ever any discussion about moving you more into the world of pop?
Oh, yeah. Anytime somebody would kind of come into the studio or start to think about strategizing, we were mostly left alone. But every now and then you'd have a meeting at the label or whatever.
But why didn't you? Why weren't you like, I could be the next Lance Bass?
I'm not fashionable enough. I would look at those guys and I would try to put on like the pop star clothes, or they would try to change my hair. I felt like I was wearing a costume. I felt like it just felt not natural. And David, to his credit, really kept me from, because at 17, of course, like the temptation was even there for me. Because I listened to everything. And so I would listen to rock singers, I would listen to pop singers, and I would say, oh man, but wouldn't it be cool if we did that? And he would just kind of be the one to say to me, like, no, not for you. That's not going to be cool for you. What's going to be cool is if we make a path that is your own thing. And so he kept that path for me, that first album. And then when the first album started to really pick up steam, I started to really realize, like, oh yeah, it was that junior high school moment. Oh, like being myself is going to be popular.
Famously, you had this experience with Celine Dion at a rehearsal for the Grammys when Andrea Bocelli just couldn't make a rehearsal.
Couldn't make a flight, yeah.
And you were asked to drop in, and
yeah.
There's video of it where you're, as you describe yourself, shaking with fear.
I was nervous. I was in class. I got pulled out of class. I was 17, 16 even when I did that.
Celine Dion recalled what happened in an interview with Barbara Walters.
And this young man comes on stage, almost going backward. He was so scared. He was going forward, but he was so shoulders like this and scared. So I see this young kid, and I'm like, okay, sure. And do you know the song? He said, yeah, I think I do. He took the microphone, and when he started to sing, he couldn't be any more powerful than that.
It was nuts. I mean, that was a very, and again, like so little time between feeling like I was the nerd to suddenly feeling like I had this voice that I could use. And then boom, someone like David Foster says, oh, you've got that voice? Here, come and sing with Celine Dion. It was terrifying. Terrifying.
And then there was a special she did 8 years later where you guys reunite, you sing the same song. And what's so stunning about it is your level of confidence and professionalism walking out onto a stage with, Celine Dion.
Yeah. I will never not be nervous standing next to Celine Dion. She's just...
Ditto. Dude,
yeah.
Ditto.
Insane.
La luce che tu dai,
I pray we'll find your light.
cuore resterà
and hold it in our heart.
a ricordarci che
When stars go out each night,
l'eterna stella sei nella mia preghiera.
let this be our prayer.
Quanta fede
When
c'è
shadows fill our days.
So clearly something happened in those I mean, a lot happened in those 8 years, but was there a moment for you when you felt like I belong on the stage with the finest singers in the world?
There, I think it was after. Well, I mean, it's I don't know. Maybe it's just the outliers effect, the 10,000 hours thing, or just having the experience, whether you're ready for it or not. If you're just thrust into it, maybe I had done 800 concerts or something by that point, and you just start to feel, like you are allowed to take ownership of a stage that you're on. I think the kid that sang with Celine at 16 did not feel he belonged on that stage, or any stage for that matter. And I felt that way about most performances that I did early on in my career, whether I was on a TV show or traveling internationally or whatever it was. Every time I would stand on that stage and the mic was in front of me, I would say to myself, well, I'm here. I haven't earned it yet, but I've got to pretend. So yeah, maybe that time singing with Celine 7 years later or whatever just happened to be at that turning point where I started to take ownership of the success, ownership of whatever it was that I was providing vocally. And I think there was some confidence that was built with that. There are some nights where I feel like I'm still faking it, and there are some nights where I feel like that guy 8 years later was Celine. But after a while, I think the experience starts to teach you what you're capable of when you aren't capable of. And I think I was in a moment at that point where I told myself I was just going to relish in the full circleness of it.
When I was looking at that first video of you with Celine Dion at that rehearsal, I kept flashing to all those YouTube videos of like Susan Boyle or these singers who show up on a stage and open their mouths and surprise people. Do you ever watch those videos? Do you ever?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, they go viral. I'm always interested in, singers getting a big break, and there's a good and a bad to those shows. I mean, they're entertaining. You watch. It's great that people are getting an opportunity to do it, but then after the show's done, they have to show who they are as an artist, and they have to continue that. And sometimes I think sometimes certain people can be taken advantage of, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I mean, I was signed and I kind of discovered still like one of the last people discovered kind of the old-fashioned way, where there was no American Idol at that point. There was no America's Got Talent. It was like, this kid is in high school. I'm on stage. My dad's got the video camera, and we're asking permission to film this insane moment that my dad's son gets to have with the superstar. And somehow that story just kind of started to get told. And
it's crazy as I'm thinking about this now, because you just said you were kind of the last one on that train. I feel like a year or 2 years, maybe 2 years later, YouTube comes along, and then I feel like Justin Bieber is right there, right on your heels.
Yeah, and he's always on me and Bieber, man. God.
But it's interesting to sort of see that parallel journey.
Yeah.
Both of you discovered at an early age, him younger.
Of technology shifting and how that changes the paradigm.
And it made me, it just strikes me now, like how different would his career be had he not had that kind of viral fame so quickly? He'd probably have less tattoos.
Yeah, sure. That's an interesting hypothesis. Yeah.
How many tattoos do you have?
They're all magic ink, so you can't see any of them. You just have to put the right light over them. I don't have any tattoos. I'm the kind of person that like follows all the tattoo artists on Instagram and is like, oh man, whoa, Dr. Wu did a really great one. That's awesome. I love the compass thing. And I just what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say with my ink? I got nothing to say. And so I figure now, I'll probably. I don't know. I'll probably get something when I turn 40. I don't know. But yeah, no. My foray into the music business was like Steve Case was sending us AOL in the mail, and suddenly there were chat rooms and there were like some message boards. And I remember the meeting like the new technology guy. There was a guy for technology at Warner Brothers now at that point.
A guy.
Yeah, a guy in like 1998, 99. who's like, there are message boards, and I think we should have a Josh Groban message board. And so I do this message board, and there's these 40 or some fans on there, and they're discussing like, well, I saw him on Ally McBeal. What's your name? Where are you from? And so, yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting to see that grow, and to be right at the beginning of that has been interesting. And then I was in San Francisco when Steve Jobs introduced this crazy thing called iTunes, and I remember him doing the PowerPoint presentation, and I remember going home and I'm like, Mom, I can buy Paul Simon's Graceland on my laptop. No, certainly that's not possible. What is this witchcraft? So, it's seeing all the changing of the guard, both at all the record labels, because the business has changed, seeing the ups and downs of good things that have happened, mistakes they've made. It certainly has been that masterclass.
And yet you remain in that vocalist sweet spot where your fans are still buying traditional albums and media.
And my goal, my job is with my fans that still like to listen to whole albums, which I'm grateful for, and some of which still buy CDs, is that we there's no escaping it. There has to be a transition into the digital age. There's no, well, maybe the CD is going to hang on. It's done. It's gone. So
it's all cassette from here on out.
It's all cassette from here on out, man. those Maxwell commercials are going to make a comeback. I think that as I make my next couple of albums, we're going to have to really be very digitally heavy with them in order to kind of wean some of my fan base off of the older way of buying music, because it's the new way.
At the age of 17, Josh Groban walked onto a stage to sing with Celine Dion, and a star was born. In the almost 20 years since that moment, Josh Groban has gone on to sell over 25 million records and tour giant arenas all over the world. But while that's amazing enough, it is his genuinely warm, funny, and unpretentious personality that is truly remarkable, and is in no small part why he has so many rabid Grobanite fans, myself included. Coming up, we talk about the reason he started writing his own music, his journey to self-acceptance, and why he isn't afraid to sing unabashedly about rainbows. You have started writing more and more your own songs.
Yeah, I just got tired of. Once you build a formula, and the fact that I suddenly had a formula. After
what was the formula?
So after the first album, I had sold, album sold millions. But
with an M.
With an M. But especially after the second album, where I had this song called "You Raise Me Up" that just went bananas.
You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be.
You start to, all of a sudden, publishers are interested in you. All of a sudden, you're not an enigma to them. They've seen something be a hit on the radio. They've seen something be in TV commercials and things like that. And all of a sudden, they assign their writers, we need you to write the next ... You Raise Me Up, or whatever it is. This song is money, baby, and we need the next 5 of those. And so you just wind up getting the one thing about having success suddenly and raising a certain bar, again, that was the formula, is, God, if I have to listen to another, song that has an Irish whistle and an inspirational chorus, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, the reason You Raise Me Up at that moment in time worked was that it was different for me than anything else that I was singing. I was like, oh, I heard it in the back of a taxi in Dublin. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can put a bagpipe on a song and that'll work, It was different. And and it blended a lot of worlds for me. It had Irish, it had gospel, it allowed me to sing, at the top of my range. But so I got frustrated. My writing came from being frustrated. I didn't realize that what I was doing when I was improvising at the piano every night after school and just messing around on the keyboard was actually writing. It actually took other great writers to say to me, what you just did, you don't know what you were just doing, but you just had an espresso and sat down and just did something. That's a hook. That's your chorus. Now you save that. We're going to save that, and we're going to now try and write a verse melody. And so that was very eye-opening to me to kind of say, okay, these 20 songs that I'm being sent, one of them is called You Lift Me Up. One of them is called You Raise Me Higher. One of them is called Standing on Mountains, version 2.
Incidentally, your version of Standing on Mountains, version 2 is phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd like to thank actually Nas for the rap verse he put on there. But I got frustrated. I said to myself, this is not what I want to do. So I said, don't be lazy. If you know what you don't want, then write what you do want. And so I decided to kind of take on the endeavor of doing some writing or continuing to do the writing that I didn't know that I had been doing my whole life. And so that's been very gratifying.
There's a pale winter moon in the sky coming through my window, and the park is laid out like a bed below. It's a cold, dark night, and my heart melts like the snow, and the bells of New York City tell me not to go.
Working with Rick Rubin was actually really interesting because he was another person akin to David Foster that just kind of said, I don't want you singing about casual things. He'd say, I don't want you singing about going down the street for a burrito. I don't want you singing the word babe, baby. I don't want you singing any of that stuff. I want you to really, and he had me reading like Rumi and having me reading love poems. And he says, your voice is chivalrous, it's romantic. Don't be afraid to stand on that pedestal and write songs that aren't being just presented by you vocally, but are coming from you, but still stay in that realm of tradition and class and classicalism and all that stuff. So that was an amazing endeavor working with him because he really pushed my songwriting to its limits and allowed me to kind of do both. And so, each album that I've done, I've tried to find that balance. Maybe that album that I did with Rick, it was probably one of my best critically acclaimed albums, but half my fan base said, hey, where's some of the more gloss that we're used to?
Where's the penny whistle?
Where's the penny whistle, goddammit? So you find the balance, and I learn a lot by co-writing as well.
That album, Illuminations, it was the first album I think you did with a different producer, yeah?
Yeah, so my overthinking sometimes, the other thing I've had to learn is sometimes not to go too extreme if something has started to work. You take for granted if you've had success after success after success, sometimes how special and rare that is. And so I had just done a Christmas album that had, in 3 months' time, become the #1 record of the entire year in 2007. And I
will point out,
yes.
In my research, I learned second best selling Christmas album in the modern age after Kenny G.
No kidding.
That's what I read.
G!
Damn you, G!
Damn you, G!
To lay before the king, pa-rum-pum-pum-pum, rum-pum-pum-pum, rum-pum-pum-pum. So to honor him, pa-rum-pum-pum-pum, when we come.
I was a little bit embarrassed by the success of that. I didn't expect it to be so huge. I knew my fans had been asking for a Christmas album for a while. I grew up with Christmas music. I love those songs. It was beautifully done. And we had the London Symphony at Abbey Road, and these arrangements were just extraordinary. There's no question I did love it. But, when your Christmas album that you made in 2 weeks beats Alicia Keys for the top spot at the end of the year, I felt a huge amount of I don't know, regret or just oh, come on.
Were you Adele versus Beyonce in that moment?
No. I still didn't win any awards for
that.
Okay. For that. No. Oh, wait, no. We're not talking about. My shelf is barren, trust me.
Okay, good.
Yeah. No, Natalie Cole, rest her soul, she beat me. I was honored to be beaten by Natalie Cole that year. I just had kind of because I didn't have any chance to go to actually rebel in high school. It wasn't until like 27 that I kind of said, Christmas album, you know, I'm going to do an album with Rick Rubin next. I felt like that was a chapter that I needed to kind of close. Like I felt like the Christmas album was something that was so unbelievably in my sweet spot down the middle that I was desperate to scare myself again. I was desperate to learn something new. And I always felt like I could return to that and reappreciate that, as I'm now starting to do again. But I needed to do something that ruffled my feathers creatively because I was feeling stuck. Even with all that success, I was feeling stuck. So I met with Rick, and we were neighbors in LA, and he agreed through a mutual friend in Guy Osiri to say hi and meet, and we started talking about music. And then the next meeting, he said, hey, play me some stuff you've been working on. I started playing him some stuff. We started talking about, how we like to record and the philosophy of what makes a good record and a bad record and all that. And he had just finished doing the Metallica record, and I had just finished doing a Christmas album, and yet we somehow agreed on all these things. And he was intrigued by the opportunity to work with a full orchestra and to work with a voice that was so different from the other stuff he was doing.
If you don't know, and I'm assuming most people know, but he's one of the founding fathers of hip hop.
He is, yeah.
And then in addition to that, in later years, he became really best known for these stripped down albums with like Johnny Cash and Neil Diamond, and then he did the Metallica record. Right. So what drew you to that guy?
I think it was after doing an album that was very largely produced, had all the trimmings, that Christmas album.
That's kind of a pun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrific.
Yes, thank you so much. I was excited by the idea that someone like Rick would say, let's try and do an album that sounds like you've brought a small orchestra into somebody's living room, and let's do an album. You've just done an album of 13 of the best loved Christmas songs. Let's do an album that is more stripped down, that is more intimate. And so, it just took a long time. Rick takes his time, and it took a long time, longer than I would have liked. But it was an amazing learning experience, and we had a great time.
On great circles will you watch for me? The sweetest feeling I've got inside. I just can't wait to get lost in your eyes.
One of the things that I think distinguishes you from other popular singers is your earnestness. And in an age of irony, that feels, and for a comedian, that feels very scary and risky.
Yeah.
To be that naked in your lyrics. I mean, you will sing unabashedly about rainbows.
Right.
And
they're beautiful.
They're beautiful.
Especially the double ones.
But is that, I guess the question is that scary for you? Is it scary to be that kind of emotionally naked?
Yeah, and I grew up listening to old school songs. I grew up listening to, people like Mel Torme, and I used to grow up listening to Rodgers and Hammerstein. And, I think that for me, I was always kind of an old soul musically, even when I was younger. And I would, of course, I would just wear out my Ben Folds records. But at the same time, and I loved hearing that kind of cleverness and irony and coolness in lyrics like those. I also, but there is earnestness in all the great music that I like to listen to. And I think that for me, finding the balance between earnestness and cheeseballiness, sometimes time gives that perspective. There are songs that came out ages ago that during the time they were lambasted. Puccini was lambasted for being too glossy with his chords, and Neil Diamond's another perfect example of somebody who, I think was given a little bit of a shit time earlier on in his kind of pop career.
Well, the Rhinestones didn't help.
They didn't help, but now we
I love Neil Diamond.
Love them. We appreciate them, and so I think that not being afraid to go into that earnestness, and as Rick said, not to be afraid to be romantic and chivalrous and poetic, even if it doesn't make you the most popular kid in high school, even when you're an adult, if it comes from a place of honesty, if it comes from a place that is best serving your voice and what you provide artistically in your lane, then you'll stick around. And so far, that's been the case.
I am noticing, speaking to you now, a similar thing that I noticed when I spoke to Jim Gaffigan.
Oh.
And I may be wrong. You can correct me.
Okay.
It sounds like you have a slight chip on your shoulder about that thing that you just said. You may not be the most popular kid in high school,
Right.
even as an adult.
Right.
And you have mentioned your Grammy shelves being barren.
If I don't laugh, I will cry.
Is there part of you, or I mean, how much of you wants to be still that cool kid with the sleeve of tattoos and the earring and feeling accepted by, I mean, maybe you do feel accepted by like the Ben Folds of the world and enveloped in that kind of cool kid love?
I would say that instinct for that need for that kind of separate kind of validation was definitely more prominent for me many years ago. Ben's a great friend now, and it's
He was talking shit about you.
Yeah,
I know
he was. It's you start to, I don't know, maybe it's just age. You start to accumulate friends that you respect and think are cool, and you can still be yourself and have those friends. Slowly but surely, you kind of start to feel the high school chip on your shoulder start to round out. Those edges start to round out a little bit, which is great. I don't think that's uncommon for most people. I know people who are pop stars who have every screaming teenager out there, and all they want is a more adult audience. All they want is more respect in a vocal capacity or whatever else. So I think that the trap when you become famous for whatever it is that the grass is always going to be greener. There's always going to be those things that you don't have, because nobody has everything except Lin-Manuel Miranda. He has absolutely everything, and he's a genius. But most of us, there's going to be something we aren't able to have. And so sure, I mean, something like the Grammys, I don't think there are enough categories in the Grammys for stuff like what I do. I think that's the case for a few different genres. I think the Grammys have some soul searching to do as far as inclusiveness for stuff that isn't that doesn't fit a certain mold. But beyond that, I think that honestly, time has proven to me that going your own way is the award in itself. And I think that I am more grateful than I've ever been in my entire life for the amazing path that this has been, and to constantly find myself in things that still scare me. Broadway has scared the shit out of me, and I've had the best time of my life. And continuing to think about what's next is still exciting for me at 36. And after, 7 albums and 15 years in this business, thinking about what to do next is still scary and wonderful. And so, is there a chip on the shoulder? I would say it's more of a fire to still accomplish things.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby.
The album stages that you did, which is great
Musicals.
Musicals.
Yeah.
Some of the songs on there are so iconic.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about like how daunting it must be to approach a song like Somewhere Over the Freaking Rainbow and think that you have anything left to contribute to that song.
Yeah.
How do you look at that and go, oh yeah?
My first instinct is, like you just said, my first instinct is no way. I'm not stepping in that vocal booth. I just have idolized and worshipped the artists that have done these songs in the past. Honestly, the thing that starts to give me more confidence to go in there and give it a shot is the people sometimes that are the unsung heroes, especially of the world I'm in, which are the arrangers and the orchestrators. They are the ones from Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra on down, that really provide the template for the vocalist to do something new on top of. I got to work with amazing arrangers. One of my favorites is a guy named Bill Ross, who did Somewhere Over the Rainbow, coincidentally, for this last album, and has done so many other arrangements for me in the past. And he knows me, and he knows my wheelhouse, and he always provides me with stuff that is both classic and honors the originals, but at the same time has twists and turns in them that allow me to be myself on it. And so,
can you give me an example, like in that song, what you would describe as a twist and a turn?
Well, a well-placed key change can always help you in certain ways. There's a great moment at the end of the song where he kind of turns the chorus on its head and allows for there to be a flip in the key change and just have this soaring moment at the
When
end.
happy little bluebirds sing,
And you'll find me somewhere. You know, because these things that are just like.
I feel like mine was slightly stronger. I'm not trying to be a dick, and I'm not. But
My mind behind me, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. If birds can fly over the rainbow, why, then oh why can't I?
you mentioned the arrangers and the orchestration that is so critical to your work. How much of a musician do you have to be a great vocalist?
Oh, I think it's exceedingly important. You have to have those instincts. And there are singers that have great instruments but haven't picked up the musicality, haven't taken the time to learn about the score that they're singing, haven't taken the time to learn about what it is about the score, what it is about the song that makes it what it is before they then start to reinvent it and make it their own. And you can always tell. You can always tell. There are great singers out there, and sometimes I really enjoy the sound of their voice, but it winds up, for whatever reason, feeling somewhat superficial or on the surface. And so I'm so grateful for my music teachers, for the music classes that I had, for having a dad that plays by ear and taught me to do the same. And also in having people like David Foster, in Rick, and other people that I've worked with who really are adamant about the fact that the singer is there in the room with the orchestra, reading over the score with the producer, making choices. It definitely helps.
When I was speaking with Audra McDonald, I asked her about this image that I've always had of great singers, and I wonder if you experienced it. That it seems to me like in their best moments, what I picture is like kind of like a pillar of light coming out of
100%.
them.
Yep.
And she said, yeah, but it's so rare to get there.
Yeah. I forgot who said it, but a famous soprano once said, like, we have 8 just flawlessly brilliant vocal days a year, and you just hope that one of them lands on stage when you have to sing. And, it does feel like a rare gift when you're in your light and it's beaming through you and you feel so grounded and rooted in your voice, and it's just everything is happening the way you want it.
Can you, Josh, hear the difference from that performance to, let's say a run-of-the-mill performance for you? Does that come through to the listener, or is it an internal thing that you're experiencing that maybe they're not?
You obviously can't get an audience with only 8 great shows a year. So the goal is, I think that 8 show a year line is basically about what it feels like to you as the performer,
right?
Where it just feels like everything you want is happening with very little mental anguish or effort or focus, that you're able to have a little bit of vocal masturbation and just enjoy it as much as the audience is hopefully enjoying it. And then the rest of the time is work. It's a lot of work. It's work before you hit the stage. It's warming up when you feel like crap. It's waking up and feeling like you need 10 glasses of water because you don't know how you're going to sing that day. And so for all the days that aren't those 8 days, you're of service to the people that are out there. And it's not always fun for you, the singer. It's not always enjoyable for you as a singer or as a performer. It's your duty to find a way to continue to move people each night with it. And it is fun. And I'm not out trying to say it's miserable out there. It's very rarely miserable. There are nights where you are getting over an illness or something like that, where every single note you are focusing and thinking, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. But for the most part, when it's not one of those perfect days, it's that's where technique comes in. That's where all your experiences, that's where the outlier thing comes in. That's where all the hard work pays off, is for those non-8 days. And hopefully your hope is that the audience out there doesn't know whether it's one of your good days or your not good days.
For the singers out there who think to themselves, as I think to myself when I watch you, it really does look effortless, and the notes seem to hit so precisely. What is the work in the hour, 2 hours before a show that you are doing? What are you literally doing to get ready for that?
When I wake up, I take a shower and I do a few scales in there, and it's like every day you're reintroducing yourself to your voice. Like, who have I got? Who is this guy today? Who have I got today? Some days it feels high, some days it feels low, some days it feels groggy. And so you then say to yourself, all right, well, how many hours do I have till showtime? You plan.
So this is really an all-day process for you. I mean, you're thinking about this.
At least in part of your mind it is. You go and do other things, but you're always thinking about what your thing is that night. You're always thinking about the 2 hours that are your 2 hours to shine each night. And so it comes down to warming up slowly, doing exercises that you feel you need. That just comes with experience or having a great coach. And just kind of, in my case, trying not to be neurotic is a really big one, is just finding ways to relax. Breathing exercises, stretching. I think, going to start doing meditating because I've heard great things about it. And I think that for someone like myself would actually be very, very helpful. And all singers are crazy. There was another soprano that's when somebody asked her, like, how do you do that high E or whatever in Puritani or whatever it was? She said, well, I just pinch my skirt. It's easy. It's like you find things that are just, then you find the nutty things that you do out there that, but ultimately all that is that's a mechanism to get you out of your head. And so after you do the work, you have to then not let your head ruin it for you.
So we're recording this right now at about 5:10 on a Tuesday.
Yes, early show day today.
So you have a 7 o'clock, is that right?
7 o'clock show, yeah.
Okay, so we're 2 hours out right now.
Woo!
And so if you were to check in with yourself vocally, where are you?
I'm going to have to do some real specific warm-ups to get myself out of talking mode, because talking is actually harder on the voice than singing. And what I should have been doing is talking to you like this the whole interview. Michael, what a pleasure to talk to you today.
Oh, and it's great to hear.
Well, I mean, I
guess I'm a little grateful that you chose not to do that.
But when we talk, we want to be cool. So getting myself out of that weighted speaking mode that we all are in is part of it. But I have a routine. I'm going to get to the stage at 6:10 exactly. That's when I have something called fight call. So anytime there's any kind of fight choreography on stage, in my case, I kick Anatole's ass at the end of the show. I throw him all around the stage. We have to rehearse it every single day. It's union rules. We have to rehearse it halftime and then full time every day. So at 6:10, I'll find out where I am kind of vocally by doing that with him. And then I'll immediately scurry into my dressing room and spend the next 45 minutes just kind of slowly getting to a place that I know I need to be for my first big song.
What is a version of Josh Groban letting go vocally?
Oh, karaoke. Oh, absolutely karaoke. I will, there is no genre I won't touch if I have 3 Zimas in me.
Doesn't that suck, though, for everybody else at the karaoke bar with you when Josh Groban gets up and sings karaoke?
It does, but I got us free nachos. So, you win some, you lose some.
All right, time for the Amazing Five. You've listened to the podcast, so you know what this is.
Yep.
I'm going to start, as we do with you, music.
The Bob Marley Legend album is a record that I have listened to since I was a kid, and I've always loved Bob Marley. I just think it's very rare that you find somebody who has so dominated a genre so completely that even this many years after his death, nobody has even come close.
And we would cook cornmeal porridge, of which I'll share with you. My feet is my only carriage, so I've got to push on through. But while I'm gonna need, everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright.
And as somebody who's in a genre that is a little bit of a crossover and comes from a world that was not necessarily popular, he's somebody that's been very, very inspirational to me.
A recommendation in books.
Oh, a book that I just read, actually, and I just did his podcast, as a matter of fact. Dan Harris's 10% Happier. Dan Harris is a news guy at ABC. He does the Nightline and weekends. And he writes very openly and honestly about his control freakdom and his neuroses and his constantly either focusing on the future or dwelling on the past and not living in the moment. And he's the guy that actually, when I read that book, I started to think about maybe meditation might be for me, because it taught him to be more present. And as he started to do that, he realized that there are ways to relax yourself, let go of that control freakdom, and not lose your edge. That I think for those of us that are highly anxious, because we tend to think that anxiety is a tool, and that being constantly on edge is actually what gives us the edge. And so reading that book was actually fascinating to me, because I felt like there was a kind of a kindred spirit who taught me to not be so not so anxious and be okay being a little more relaxed sometimes.
Former guest of How to Be Amazing. Food.
Do people recommend like restaurants, or is
Sure.
it more of a? Okay.
It can be whatever you want.
Oh boy, food. I mean, this in New York. I just eat my way through everything. I will say, I'm a sucker for ramen, so I would say at the moment, Ippudo is definitely worth the 2-hour wait for an icy cold beer and some vocal soothing ramen.
What is your preferred order at a ramen shop?
Well, I generally like to get, if they have it, like more of a chicken-based thing. I kind of like flipping it on the chicken soup kind of thing. I stopped eating pork for no other reason than I just started to realize that they're just as smart. They're smart animals. They're as smart as dogs. They're emotionally intelligent. And so I know it's totally hypocritical. I still eat other animals, and I'm sure they're very smart and emotionally aware as well. And
The
it's all
problem is
awful.
they're also just as delicious as dogs.
Are they? Well, I'll never look at my dog the same way again.
Movie or television?
One of my favorite movies of all time is one that very few people have seen. It's called The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Yeah.
It's a Terry Gilliam film. Bombed at the box office, but I also have fondness for that. The score was incredible, and I just thought it was just so fantastical and awesome. And I show it to people as often as I can, and I've always loved it. I've kind of gotten into Westworld, and I've noticed a lot of similarities between Westworld and Broadway. For anybody who's seen Westworld, like Broadway, like every night, it's like we're waking up and doing the same loops. We have the same lines. We walk in the same places. Sometimes hosts change out. Somebody's sick and a new host comes in, does the same line, does the same thing, but it's a different host. The audiences, we welcome the newcomers, and we hope that they've had a lovely experience every night. No, I think that there's a lot. When I watch something like Westworld or The Matrix or something, I start to read all the blogs about, like, what are we anyway?
But both of those shows are fairly dystopian.
Yeah.
Has Broadway been a fairly dystopian experience for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely you question your reality quite a bit doing the same show every night and looking at different people as you do it. It's a very odd experience, but rewarding.
And then finally, first thing that comes to your mind when I say miscellaneous, anything from your life that you would recommend to others?
Anything miscellaneous from my life that I recommend to others? I would say pick up an instrument, even if you're bad at it. During like Christmases and stuff, like, every so often I'd ask for like a video game or something like that. But my parents are like, sometimes I'd unwrap like, a didgeridoo or something, like, oh, what's this? Well, we saw it at this store, and we thought you might.
Saw it at the didgeridoo store.
At the didgeridoo store on Larchmont, and we thought you'd enjoy it. I have found that like figuring out instruments and playing around with instruments has provided me with more joy than many other things that I could possibly have picked up in my life. So I would say find an instrument that you think you're bad at and just go somewhere where nobody's going to hear you and just play your heart out, even if it sucks.
Well, Josh Groban, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and coming and not incidentally, making me a Josh Groban fan.
I really appreciate that. Well, I've always been a Michael Ian Black fan.
Thank you
so much for the wonderful inspiration and the great laughs that you provide all of us every day, and for your woke-ass tweets.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being amazing.